From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Making sustainability add up.
Sustainability is great, but the first leg of sustainability's got to be bottom line profits. Without profits, there is no sustainability.
How a ranch in Oklahoma is making it happen as we continue our Trust and Beef Sustainable Ranch Tour. More aid is on the way for dairy producers facing losses due to avian flu as we prepare for a new telling batch of numbers from the USDA.
We're going to have instead more PP acres in the northwest part of the belt.
What forecasters are predicting and how recent flooding in key growing areas could factor in. Right now on AgDay.
AgDay, presented by Pioneer. What's next happens when the name on the cap matches the power of one's purpose. Pioneer. What's next happens here.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. A big USDA report comes out later today, and many are wondering if it will contain any surprises. It's the planted acreage report. Plus, we'll also get an update on grain stocks. AgDay's Michelle Rook joins us. And Michelle, what about all that rain and flooding in the northwestern Corn Belt? Might that be factored in?
Actually, USDA survey work was mostly done before the flooding started, and so it isn't likely to show up in this report, but instead down the road is unharvested acres. However, with the wet spring and some planting delays in some areas, that may have shifted some acres. The acreage report has historically led to some early fireworks, and that may be the case again this year. The report will feature planted and harvested acreage estimates for principal crops. Average trade guesses are fairly close to the March intentions, with corn acreage about 300,000 acres higher, soybean acreage up nearly 250,000, and wheat up around 160,000. However, some market analysts think the corn number is too high, with the lower profitability of the crop and the pace of planting.
This was an expensive crop to put down, high interest rates, just everything's, and then we didn't have that ideal planting season. There was a lot of rain. I just don't see the corn acres being able to live up to what the current numbers are out there for. Obviously, what corn loses, you certainly would expect soybeans to gain on.
Oftentimes, you get a very quick planting progress. You get a lot of corn planted in April, and you're still able to go in early May. Well, then you sometimes get more corn acres. Now, some folks think we're going to get more bean acres because it didn't work out that way. But my thought is that we're going to have instead more PP acres in the northwest part of the belt.
And those prevent plant acres won't show up for a while.
They'll start releasing their preliminary in August, and then you really don't look at it until September, because as you have late planting, it just takes guys a little longer to get the FSA and report their acres. So I think a lot of them will still be reporting in August.
He adds that most of the flooding in the northwestern Corn Belt came after the survey as well, and so those acres will likely show up as unharvested acres.
And again, those are adjustments that we're not going to see coming from USDA until probably, November, maybe even the January final report.
There's some agreement that quarterly stocks could be a big surprise as well, with strong cash basis levels and forward spreading in corn and soybean futures.
What's interesting about the expectations is that the cash markets aren't necessarily saying that we have that much overhang of supply.
However, there will still be a build in inventory over 2023.
But we're still running, as of June 1, corn stocks 19% over a year ago, soybean stocks 21% over a year ago, and the wheat about 19% or 20% over a year ago. So bottom line, corn, beans, and wheat, we just have more grain as of June 1 than we had a year ago.
Average trade estimates have quarterly stocks up on corn 770 million bushels versus last year. Soybean stocks up 166 million and wheat up 114 million bushels. I'm Michelle Rook reporting for AgDay.
All right, thanks, Michelle. A farmer's death in Missouri is being blamed on storms that swept through the state on Tuesday. The AgDay County Sheriff's Office says Mike Arns was killed when a utility pole fell on him at his family-owned farm in Mexico, Missouri. Officers say Arns was moving a tractor into a shed as a storm was moving through the area at the time. Mike's brother telling one local TV station their family has farmed in the area since the 1940s. Martinsburg firefighters sharing a picture of them with Mike. They say the Arns family recently provided them with a training opportunity and that Mike had trained with them as well. Mike Arns was 58 years old. And storms continue to push through the Midwest with more rain on the way from Missouri and Iowa. Meteorologist Matt Engelbrecht joins us with an update.
Yeah, we continue to see a weak system work across the United States, and you can see as we get into Saturday that severe weather threat extends far back here towards the Four Corners all the way to the east. And this long stretch of possible severe weather has to do with a cold front stretching across the United States. And then as we'll look at in a little bit, there's going to be a low pressure system that works around that cold front. So you put those two together, that's why we could have some stronger storms in and across the United States coming up on Saturday. Once that cold front moves south, now it is going to pull up stationary, because as we've been talking about the last couple of days, ridge of high pressure is going to dominate a good portion of the United States as we get deeper into next week, specifically now here over onto the west coast. So brief downpours, strong winds, small hail. With the severe weather risk right now, it's more few severe storms, but there is the chance that as you get deeper into Saturday evening, Saturday night, you may see several severe storms take shape. And while others are getting pummeled with rain, Dan is getting the irrigation system going. Dan Lewis lives in Oregon. He says this marks the start of irrigation season for him, which is probably the latest start in 5 years. I'll have more in your forecast, including the latest drought monitor, coming up in just a bit.
Conflicts over water in Idaho appear to have been settled for now. The state's governor this week signing the Protecting Idaho Water Sovereignty Act. The government saying the plan will chart a path forward on a new long-term agreement between water users that works for all farmers while providing for a healthier aquifer. The act comes a week after the governor also worked out a deal to end a water curtailment order for many farmers in the state. The Idaho Department of Water Resources saying earlier this month those curtailments were necessary because of a predicted water shortfall, estimating 500,000 acres of farmland could be impacted. But the governor says everyone worked together to compromise and find a solution. He says groundwater and surface water users will meet to establish an improved mitigation plan by October 1st. Starting Monday, USDA will start accepting applications for financial aid for dairy farmers impacted by avian flu. The aid will come through the Emergency Assistance for Livestock, Honeybees, and Farm-Raised Fish program. It will cover 28 days of milk loss per cow over a 134-day period. It's based on the monthly all milk price and expected milk production per cow.
We want to assist our dairy producers in every way we can to assist them as they combat this emerging animal health disease challenge.
Applications will be accepted at local Farm Service Agency offices. It comes as case numbers continue to grow. USDA now reporting 132 dairy herds impacted in 12 states. Wheat climbed while corn sunk again. Could we see a reversal soon? We'll talk to some market analysts and get their take. And later, fighting drought while practicing sustainability. One ranch in Oklahoma proves you can do both in the country. Just how much farmland is covered by crop insurance? USDA's Economic Research Service digging into the numbers. Releasing this chart, it says according to the 2022 Census of Agriculture, from 2017 to 2022, the share of cropland acres covered by federal, private, or other crop insurance programs grew, especially among small to medium farms. It says the percentage of cropland acres with crop insurance across all farms has increased by almost 9%. The researchers say farms operating 70 to just under 100 acres saw the largest gains in coverage, with the share rising by more than 20%. Corn futures were lower for the sixth straight session on Thursday, but gains in wheat helped to cut the losses. Michelle Rook is back with more on what traders are watching in markets now.
Grain markets ending mixed on Thursday, heading into the big USDA reports. Dwayne Bussey is joining us with analysis. New lows for the move in both corn and soybeans on Thursday. Dwayne, are we just leaning way too bearish there going into these reports, do you think?
Yeah, I think we are. I think we're getting to the point that even if we have a bearish report, we could bounce back. But boy, this market has sold off so hard for so long. I know it's caught me up in Well, that's as low as it can go, and then it goes lower and lower. So yeah, we've definitely leaned bearish into today's big report.
Yeah. So how much bearishness do you think is already programmed into these prices as far as what the trade is expecting?
The trade is expecting almost a 2 million acre increase in corn acres. And I think that's what we're pricing in here. So, if you do see that at 11 o'clock, Michelle, you might get that down, 15 cents right away on a lot of bulls going, oh, I'm throwing in the towel, get me out of my long positions. But you could recover into the close. At least that's what I'm kind of betting on. We've gone down so hard for so long. You can have a bearish report and actually end the day somewhat friendly.
Yeah, because obviously whether the fact that we're in the delivery period or going into it has kind of contributed to the selling in corn and beans this week too, hasn't it?
Absolutely. When it comes to the July option contracts or the July contract in general, you get a lot of farmers that roll from March, roll to July. And a lot of times you get to this time of year, it's just give up, just get out. So I think we've had a lot of farmers selling in that front month contract, and that's really weighed on the market this week.
How will USDA handle, unplanted acres, prevent plant acres, that sort of thing?
Sadly, I don't think they'll be able to calculate that yet. I mean, it was just a week and a half ago. I was still trying to plant on our farm, and, by then their surveys are already out there. So, the flooded acres, they're just going to leave kind of unchanged for now. They're going to change that in upcoming reports.
And the wheat market was higher on Thursday. Was that just short covering because we're oversold?
Yeah, that's all it was. I mean, we really tried to make bullish stories out of it. There is a heat ridge building in Russia. Our exports were okay for the week, but honestly, I think it's just this market has been beaten up so bad for so long. I think it's a lot of short covering in front of that end of the month, end of the quarter.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks for joining us, Dwayne Bussey with Volt Marketing. We'll have more AgDay coming up.
Watch Markets Now with Michelle Rourke on the Farm Journal YouTube channel, keeping you updated throughout the day on the markets at the open, midday, and close. Find out what moved the markets today and what to expect the market to do next.
For marketing advice, call Volt Marketing, a futures and options brokerage firm.
Here's a look at the latest drought monitor. Now keep in mind the rainfall that we got Tuesday afternoon into Tuesday night and Wednesday will not be included in the latest drought monitor. But I at least want to give you a look at what we have again coming out with the very latest. Still dry to moderate drought back into parts of the Midwest out here towards the east. And then you're still in the extreme, if not exceptional drought into parts of Texas, the Big Bend area, as well as back up into New Mexico. Montana also seeing a dry to moderate drought as we get deeper into the northwest. That starts to show up into portions of Seattle. As we look at the precipitation forecast, where we get some help, where we don't get some help in the next 24 hours, really the rain's going to be spreading in and across the Midwest as a weak, we'll call it a shortwave trough, brings up some energy right along a cold front. As we talked about earlier, you combine those two and you got heavy downpours, perhaps some stronger thunderstorms early in the day on Saturday and then extending out towards the east, especially on the East Coast as we get into Saturday night and then into Sunday morning. So for that 24-hour period, you're looking at a good slug of moisture into the Midwest, back over towards Ohio, Pennsylvania, also the southeast. Where we need the rain, it's going to be hard to come by. That includes parts of Texas, also into New Mexico, Montana, chance of some light showers. The best energy for some of the rain, much needed rainfall into Montana and also Washington, that is actually going to be back here towards the east. If we could, I'd love to take this energy and move it back to the west, but the weather doesn't work that way. Here's a look at, again, the 7-day period with that precipitation outlook. The temperature outlook, more of the same. Is still expecting that ridge of high pressure to not only develop back out here towards the west, but also into the southeast, with most of that energy working up over the ridge rather than through it. There's a jet stream coming up on Friday, and you see the top part of your screen on parts of the Dakotas, back into Minnesota. That is the energy that will spread out the rain along the cold front. There's a jet stream coming in on Saturday. We'll start off with Red Lake, lower Red Lake, Minnesota. Scattered thunderstorms high around 73 degrees. Green, Oregon, partly cloudy, high at 84 degrees. And we'll end with Bluegrass, Iowa.
John Deere unveils some updated iron. We'll check out the latest in smart farming coming up next. And later, we're off to Oklahoma and a ranch that's been able to keep the herd intact despite facing drought for several years. John Deere is beefing up one of its popular tractor series. This is a new 6M tractor. It's being added to its model year 2025 class of machines, and it comes with several customizable options. It has 18 different models, engine options with 95 to 250 horsepower, and 5 frame size options. Deere says the 6M tractor is fuel efficient and easy to operate. A John Deere spokesperson describing the 6M as a workhorse, saying it's the go-to tractor for many farms, including dairy and beef operations. USDA is looking for your input on climate-smart farming standards for biofuel feedstocks to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It's looking for public input on procedures for quantifying, reporting, and verifying the effects of climate-smart farming practices on emissions for U.S.-grown biofuel feedstock crops. The agency is saying the information is needed for establishing voluntary standards for biofuel feedstocks grown using practices that reduce GHG emissions or sequester soil carbon. It says these standards could be considered in international, national, or state clean transportation fuel policies to help incentivize climate-smart biofuel feedstock crops. Well, we hear a lot about sustainability these days, but it's more than a buzzword out in ranch country in Oklahoma. We check out another stop on the Trust in Beef Sustainable Ranch Tour next. Cattle producers by nature are legacy planners, but the demands to pass on the operation with the challenges of weather and carbon reduction are daunting. AgDay's Michelle Rook visited one Oklahoma cattle operation that's embracing change through technology and data analysis.
Sustainability is more than a buzzword for Bertram Cattle. It's the way they run their business, and it's what kept them from having to cull part of their herd during the historic drought here in Oklahoma. Bertram Cattle is a 400 to 500 head commercial stock cow operation spanning 5,000 to 6,000 acres of native grassland plus 650 acres of wheat they graze in the summer.
And we're letting those native pastures rest all summer long to grow that forage to be able to limit the hay that we need to feed those cattle.
Their prescribed grazing management has been the key to keeping the herd intact through the last 3 years of drought.
You know, rotational grazing to us is the big thing that we've done as far as the conservation practices, letting those pastures rest.
Cattle rotate every 2 weeks using conventional fencing and a new technology, virtual fencing. This transmitter around the cow's neck will emit a warning sound to keep her in the correct grazing area and aids in monitoring animal health.
Rotating cattle without a permanent fence, just like our dog's in the yard and he can't go beyond that boundary. We're trying that same concept with cattle. Where is that fence boundary? Can we move cattle with the click of a mouse on the computer? Where are they at? Is that cow having a calving problem?
They also enhance grass production through nutrient management and weed control.
We'll talk about spraying techniques. We've used the inoculated fertilizer with the Grazon that's, with the weed control on there. We've done that.
Beyond that, Bertrams attribute much of their success to data analysis. Clay's father, Mike, started Farm Data Services 43 years ago, a management accounting firm.
And we're looking at return per acre, return per animal unit. We're looking at their crops. We're looking at the crop insurance programs. Crops are going to plant. We analyze that. We look at the government programs. We look at how does LRP and marketing work. It is a complete approach to that.
That data helps them make the changes they need in the operation to stay viable long term.
Sustainability is great, but the first leg of sustainability's got to be bottom line profits. Without profits, there is no sustainability.
Bertram also works with producers on succession planning to pass the operation to the next generation.
A typical rancher, his kids he sends them to college and then he brings them home. Well, generally, the trough isn't big enough to add more families. So you've got to analyze your business and see how can they come home.
And both generations of Bertrams agree part of preserving their legacy requires telling their story to the public.
There's people that don't want us to eat beef. They don't want to see us progress and envision. We have a lot of education to do with the younger generation that don't know where their food comes from, that we need to educate.
Which will help sustain the entire U.S. beef chain for the future. I'm Michelle Rourke reporting for AgDay.
All right, thanks, Michelle, and that's all the time we have this morning. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day on Farm Country.